Hello, beautiful souls. How are you guys doing today? I am so excited to bring this conversation to you. For those that are new, welcome to Rooted and Rising. My name is Cara, Avery, and I am bringing you on a journey with me through conversations around love, growth, and purpose. And so I'm so excited that you have decided to join me because today's episode is going to be powerful, right? And for those that love to write, for those that love to tap in and really understand more about yourself, and some of the previous episodes that I hope that you have already watched, we have talked about internal dialogue. We have talked about survival mode. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about love letters, right? And how I began to write love letters in my becoming. One of the things that in my investigative and discovery state, and just throughout the years, right? I've talked very heavily about my journaling and what's important to me in writing, right? I think that when you are putting pen to paper, it's so important. We write our visions, we write our dreams. Penmanship as a whole is just like this lost art form, right? When we think about calligraphy and the beauty of writing, it used to be this beautiful space holder that we would take on when we didn't have, texting, or when we didn't have, email and all of these different spaces. You had to write someone a letter. Even now, it's still it's a format that people actually speak to prisoners, right? And people that are in prison still have access to a lot of different devices and a lot of different things, but they still receive letters. And if you think about back in the day when men would go to war, even during biblical times, there are certain books in the Bible that are really heavily focused on letters and what those letters entail, whether they were love letters or messages, but all of this entailed writing letters. And one of the first things that you learn how to do in school is learn how to write a letter, right? And so for me, I kind of decided to go back to the basics of that. And it really wasn't just a decision that was by my design. I, in meditation, received a message to start writing some letters and to help me to begin a certain state of discovery around my dialogue. And so I'm going to be sharing just some parts of that, some of the prompts, some of the reasons why with you today that I've begun to write more letters, right? And I'm not good. I'm not great at thank you letters. I'm gonna throw that out there. A lot of times people are like, "Oh, did you write a thank you note?" Or it's normally a thank you note, and I'm just like the worst at writing a thank you note after like a party or any type of thing. So don't hold me to that. But I have found such value in expressing myself through letters because sometimes, even in email, sometimes saying the hard thing, because I think that it gives me a chance to get my message heard without the fear of the rebuttal from the other person. And so I have my notes here because I wanted to make sure that I gave you all of, the key points and gave you some key prompts to be able to do this. But for myself, when I entered into this self-discovery stage, first I began by investigating some of the dialogue. And previously, I knew that I didn't have a lot of trust. And I wanted to understand, where did I lose the dynamic of my trust, right? And in me kind of beginning to heal my heart, and like healing has been a continual process for me. I did a lot of work for a number of years just to get to a certain level of healing, to meet a partner. And then through the partnership, there were different trials and traumas and tribulations that I may or may not have healed from. And I was equipped with a lot of the tools. So sometimes you have all of what you need, you're just not activating on it, right? A lot of times we have the tools, be it if that tool is a Bible, that you're making that your point of reference, being if it's any type of maybe, spiritual books or spiritual text or just self-help books in general. A lot of times we have some key attributes. Nowadays we have social media and we have YouTube and we have all of these different channels to help us to understand more about and to begin a process of healing, but we don't always utilize them. And then even when we begin to utilize them, we're not taking full responsibility in that space, which limits the healing component, right? When you're not able to take full responsibility for your life, your experiences in certain aspects, your healing, there's a limitation gap there. One of the things that for me, and I don't want to just say one of the things because it's like so many pieces and parts, but there was a dynamic of this that I had to realize I was living in a certain state of victimhood, that I couldn't understand why all of these things were happening to me, right? And in victimhood, I lacked accountability. I lacked accountability in my victimhood in certain situations in my life. And I could always point the blame at this other person. But I needed to find my power. I needed to rekindle that power within me. And in me doing so, I had to become the hero and not the victim. I had to become Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? Like we had to tap into our Wonder Woman bag. And so I decided that I no longer wanted to rest in this space of victimhood. And that was really important for me. And then I also was investigating my dialogue. Where was I creating spaces of distrust with myself? Where was that showing up for me? It was showing up for me at work, right? It was showing up for me in my relationship. It was showing up for me in my friendships. It was showing up in the ways that I diminished my voice at certain times. It was showing up in how I did a bunch of people pleasing. It was showing up in the ways that I didn't set boundaries for myself. It was showing up in how I ate, right? And the lack of commitment that I would give to myself. It was showing up in the days that I would say I was going to the gym, but I wouldn't, right? And I wouldn't make a invested interest in myself. So if I step outside of myself and I say, I'm going to do this thing, this other version of me is like, no, you're not. I can't trust you to do that because every time you said you were going to do that, you didn't show up. Or you felt, you may have fallen short. And so I really needed to reprogram all of that. I had to deconstruct that belief system within myself that was running in the background of like all of these thoughts and narratives. And in that deconstruction process, I began to do that healing through writing the letters. And so I think that one of the prompts that I think could be helpful to you is when you're in a moment of grief or confusion, who were you? Who were you in your moment of grief? And when did that first moment of grief or confusion happen? At what age? One of the key things that came up for me was that I needed to go back to understand where the shame started, where the hurt started? Where did the hurt begin? And so I went back and I started writing letters to that little girl, to that girl that was 7, to the girl that was forced to, I remember an instance where I was forced to eat beans. And I was talking to a friend because I was like, oh, I don't eat beans. And I don't eat beans because I was in school and I had a teacher. I didn't like the consistency of beans. And so when I was in school, she was like, you need to eat your lunch. And I was in like a smaller, I would say it was kind of like, it wasn't really like a private school, but it was what you would maybe nowadays call like a charter school. It was a smaller school. And I was probably in like kindergarten, maybe between kindergarten and first grade. And she was like, you need to eat your food. Well, the food that they had was like chili and it had a bunch of beans. And I didn't want to eat it. And I was kind of refusing. And the like lunch lady or the monitor, she just wasn't accepting of that for me. So she was like, you're not going to go. Everybody else got to go outside to play and I didn't get to go. She was like, you have to eat those beans. So she was like, eat the beans. You better eat those beans. So she kind of like forced me, mind you, like I'm trying to eat these beans and I'm throwing up. Right. I'm like, they're like, I'm kind of gagging, trying to eat them. I'm crying, because I'm upset. And number one, it was an adult that did that. Right. Number two, I had nobody to create safety for me in that moment. And I was made to feel that I was doing something wrong because it was something that I didn't like. Right. So now I've got this association that if it's something that I don't like, I've got to be forced into liking it, or I've got to do this thing because it's something wrong with me. So from that point forward, I have never eaten beans. Don't like beans. Most of the time, I tell people that I'm allergic because I don't want them to get offended. But I had to go back and find that little girl and stand up for her. And I think that in that process, also, I additionally became a little bit more hypersensitive to certain situations where I feel like I needed to protect her. I needed to protect this young girl. I needed to protect that version of me. So I was also building up walls, building up barriers, right? And as I went throughout life, I felt like I needed to build up more and more barriers. As some people talked about, you put on different masks, right? For me, I was building barriers. I was building myself a fortress that you couldn't come through. So when you encountered me, you got the version of me that I felt like was acceptable to give to you. Right? You got the version of me that I felt was safe with you. And that's a very challenging place to be. And I don't think that we're always aware that that's what's happening for us. So when you were in a moment of grief, when you were in this space, what did your younger self need to hear? Right? What did your younger self need to hear from you? A lot of times, I felt like my younger self maybe needed to hear that this isn't your fight. This isn't your fight. I remember my parents arguing and me feeling like I needed to step in and save my mom and help protect her. And sometimes your younger self needs to know that this isn't your fight, that you are a child. And it's okay. And I know that it's scary. And I know that you are afraid. And I'm sorry that this is happening. And this isn't your fight. And just being able to acknowledge that within your nervous system, within your body. What strength did you have to create for yourself based on some of these situations and see some of these dynamics? I know for me, I became what some would call a hyper masculine woman, right? That I didn't feel a lot of comfort leaning into my feminine energy. And I didn't even know, for a while, I didn't even know the difference in between the two, right? Because I'm just like, oh, I'm feminine. I like dresses sometimes. But I remember, like, in the 90s, like I grew up in the 90s, so I'm baggy pants era, I'm baggy shorts era. And I remember also my body changing and feeling so uncomfortable with my body. So I was actually like covering myself and wearing baggier clothes because I was like, what's underneath is making me uncomfortable. So I know if someone else comments on it, it's gonna be weird and awkward. So being able to write a letter to that teenage version of me to give me comfort with my body, to give me comfort in my beauty, right? Because one of the things that I also had a challenge with was being a dark-skinned woman, right? I thought for a really long time that it's these small moments, right? It's these really small moments, and everybody has them. Most people have them. Some people get ridiculed because they're too skinny. Some people get ridiculed because they're too big. Some people get isolation because they get razzed because they wear glasses, or because their teeth are crooked, or all of these different things. And then when we get older, all we're fixating on is those changes. I've got to fix that. I've got to fix this about me. I've got to fix that about me because this is an imperfection. When you came into this world as perfection, right? And when you were walking around at that teenage version of you was perfection, of what we would consider perfection, right? And it wasn't anything wrong with you. You just wore glasses. Or it wasn't anything wrong with me. My skin was just more melanated than some others. And I had to write letters to myself just to acknowledge my beauty and get back in resonance with my beauty and with those aspects of myself. And I think it's so important because as you are thinking about the letters that you want to write, think about that past, think about the present, and then you also want to think about the letters that you're going to write to your future self. I've seen people that have actually recorded videos and said, okay, it's this time, it's this year, and these are all, hopefully you've accomplished all of these things, right? And they've recorded videos for their future self. I'm not too big on that because I am now in a place where I want to leave that open. I want to have my future state more in flow. So for me, I'm actually more focused on being in the present. But I think that what's allowed for me to be more in the present is the healing that I have had to do from the past. And so being able to understand, get into resonance, listen to that dialogue, making sure that I am helping to create a narrative of love for myself while I'm writing these love letters. And sometimes when you're writing the letters, you're going to acknowledge points of pain from other people, right? You can even write the letter and say, I'm sorry such and such did this to you. I'm sorry that this person hurt you in this way. Because you were deserving of so much more. You were deserving of so much more love. You were deserving of so much more time. You were deserving of so much more attention, right? You deserve that. And I think that that's a part of the beauty of the love letter is building up your worthiness or rebuilding your connection to your worthiness. For a segment of time, I wrote these letters to my ex. And at the beginning of the letters, I remember profusely apologizing because I felt like so much of it was my fault. And then as I continued to write the letters, I was healing. I was moving out of that state, and I was understanding that this was a joint effort. So now what type of letter did I want to write? Well, I wanted to write a letter that encouraged what could be co-created, right? What could this be? What could we create as co-parents in this space? But I also had to and what was I accepting about the situation? Because I think that that's important. What do I need to accept about this situation? What do I need to accept about how I feel? So I focused that mostly on the letters that I wrote to myself. I wrote letters to myself as well for like months. Like every day I had to write these love letters to myself to just say, I take full accountability for how I was showing up, and it's okay, and I love you. And a lot of it was like, look at where you are, look at where you're doing, and I love you, and I'm proud of you, and I see you, and I'm glad you're here. And I needed to do that to nourish myself. And I also think that it's so important and I do this as a self-love practice, right? What am I accepting about myself? Where am I being vulnerable with myself? Where am I being authentic with myself? And where am I moving out of being a victim? How am I taking responsibility for my life? What am I creating, right? Where am I tapping into that creative source energy that I have running inside of me, and tapping into that when I'm writing these letters? Another prompt when you're writing the letters is, what truth are you sitting with today? What is true for you today? What's true for me today is that my house is clean. Right? Some days it's just that simple. What is the truth for me today? The truth for me today is that I'm tired and that I'm exhausted, but I'm still showing up. Sometimes that's the truth for you. Sometimes your truth can be, I'm lonely and my heart aches for partnership and connection. Maybe that's your truth for the day. Some days your truth may be, I'm overjoyed. I got the promotion. I got the big contract. We signing deals, that could be your truth for the day. And so I think that getting into a space of resonance with what is your truth for that day is very, very powerful. Taking the time to sit down and write those things in your letter. And then what are you accepting about this moment? What are you loving on yourself in or around in this moment? And I think that I say first and foremost, write the letters for yourselves, but it's available to write these letters to others. Sometimes you will write a letter to someone and it can be a letter that is written in love, but you are letting them know how they have hurt you, and you may not send the letter. They might be gone. They might have left this earthly realm, and you can still write that letter because that letter is about your healing. That letter is about you. And so I think that that's an important component to remember, that if you write a letter and you share it with another person, don't create an expectation of them to respond. They might not come to you and say, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much for writing this letter. That may not happen. Sometimes it's just silent. Okay, cool, thanks. Or it might not be nothing at all. You still write the letter. You're writing the letter for you. You're not writing the letter for them. One thing that's important, and I'm going to do this because I've done this, is that I will place my hand on my heart space. When we are talking about our intentions, when we are talking about living and expressing ourselves authentically, when we are talking about our vulnerability and our truths, we want to tap into our heart space. So putting your hand over your heart, acknowledging yourself in this present moment, and then saying, What is true for me today? What does my heart need to hear? What does my heart need to hear today? My heart needs to hear that my heart is proud. My heart is proud of me today. My heart is proud of everything that I am doing because I am moving out of discomfort, right? Me being on camera, talking to you all brings me a significant amount of discomfort. Every time I sit down, I'm a little bit nervous, but I feel like it's where I've been called towards, and I've wanted to share this space with you. So every time I'm holding space with you, my heart gets a little bit bigger. It gets a little bit bigger for me. So my heart needs to hear that I'm proud. And what does your heart need to hear from you today? I think the next thing that I think would be important to understand is, what are you learning about you? And this goes, it's so important for me to share that these practices, while I know that a bulk of the audiences in these spaces are women, or it's everything that we're doing is gender fluid, right? I think that even for men, what does your heart need to hear from today? What does your heart need to hear about today? Where do you need to give yourself space, right? Where do you need to give yourself room? Where do you need to shift maybe your internal dialogue in this moment? I think that sometimes men are so focused on the doing that they miss parts of the being. And so I want to even say, does your heart just need to be today? You know, do you just need to have a conversation with being, with yourself today? I think the next prompt, and this will probably be the final one, is, what are some of the hopes and the dreams for your future self? For that version of you that is fully expressed, for that version of you that is full of love, for that version of you that is whole and complete. What are some of the dreams and some of the moments and some of the things that you want to share with that version of you? And so when you're sitting down and you're writing your letter, write a letter to that version of you. Oh, the version of me is so excited about having dinner on a beach with a beautiful glass of wine and a beautiful meal and enjoying hearing the ocean and the waves crash. Right? That is love to me. That is something that my soul loves. And there's when I think about the version of me, that's relaxation. That's a vibe. I like to write to the version of me that is in a much more state of surrender, right? Writing to the version of me that is surrendering to all aspects of my life. When you are thinking about, if you want to tap into the future state, you want to tap into the future state of you that is the version of you that is already fully expressed. So that's it, y'all. That's all I got for you today. I hope that you will begin to write some love letters to yourself. I hope that you will go back and actually maybe make this a practice with some of your family members. I know that oftentimes we have done vision boards, but what about a love board? You know what I mean? What about making a board of all the things that you love about yourself, that you want to experience in a certain version, maybe making that a part of your vision, but then writing a letter or a love letter to yourself to begin that process of discovery. So, peace and blessings, y'all.